นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
บุญหังสารนังกัจฉามิ
พุทธังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ธัมมังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ธัมมังสารนังกัจฉามิ
สังฆังสารนังกัจฉามิ
สังฆังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ติยัมปิบุญหังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปีบุตตังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ติยัมปิธัมมังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปีธัมมังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ติยัมปิสังฆังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ดุติยัมปีสังฆังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ติยัมปิบุญหังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ทัตติยัมปีบุตตังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ติยัมปิธัมมังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ทัตติยัมปีธัมมังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ติยัมปิสังฆังสารนังกัจฉามิ
ทัตติยัมปีสังฆังสารนังกัจฉามิ
สารณกัมมนังนิติทัง
ปมาบันเต
อานาทิปาตาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
ปานาติปาตาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
อดินนาดานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
อดินนาดานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
อาเมสุมิจฉาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
คาเมสุมิจฉาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาดาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาดาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
สุราเมรยะมัจจปมาดฐานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
สุราเมรยมัจจาปมาดทานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
มานิปัญจสิกขาปดานิสีเลนะสุขติงยันติสีเลนะโภคสัมปดาสีเลนะนิพุติงยันติตัสมาสีลังวิโสทาติ
สาธุสาธุสาธุ
So we'll do some chanting together.
Sampā sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa
อิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหะ
สัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณสัมปันโนสุขโตโลกวิทูอนุตตโรปุริสธัมมัสสารติสัตตาเดวมนุสสานังบุตโตภะคะวาติ ภะคะวะตาธัมโมสันติติโกอัคคาลิโกเอหิปัสสิโกโอปานาอิโกปัจจัตตังเวดิตาโบวินยูหิติ
ปฏิปันโน
ภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอุจุปาติปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆญาญาปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสามีจิปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆญาติดังชัตตาริปุริสยุกานิอัตตปุริสปุกลาเอสะภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุเนโยปาหุเนโยดากินเนโยอัญชลีกรณิโยอนุตตรังปุญญเขตังโลกาสาติ
Says what should be done
By one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting nine, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near or far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, well, making yourself comfortable, but it's a kind of comfort that is also conducive to bringing up energy. And that kind of comfort means that your posture should be one that is straight and erect. So I always try to make that emphasis of being able to straighten out your spine. That's the one that really matters. And if you're breathing in, you can just follow your spine down and tuck in, as it were, your abdomen slightly and feel how the body gets a little bit taller. You lower your head slightly. And to me, it always feels like a puppet being pulled up by a string at the top of my head. And then when you really feel you're all the way straight, then you relax your shoulders, and then you breathe out, relaxing into that posture. Because having a stable posture is very important. Even though we're only sitting for 10 minutes or so, you want to sit meditation long, you need to be able to hold your body erect and feel at ease, and feel at peace with this body. So the breath is a wonderful vehicle to breathe into the body. This wind element, as you might call it, supplies the body with oxygen. And as such, the wind element, the breath, is to be found everywhere in the body. So technically, you could actually watch your breath anywhere in the body if your mind is subtle enough to notice it. But wherever it feels comfortable to notice your breath going in, that's a good place to stay. Personally, I like watching my breath in the heart. I breathe into my heart and I breathe out from the heart. That way, I just bring this breath element, this wind element, to really reach the whole body. And we can breathe in peace. And we can breathe out peace. The breath can be used as a medium for almost any meditation. Even if we spread loving kindness, we can breathe into the heart, wishing ourselves, may I be well. And we can breathe out from the heart, wishing all beings, may they be well. And we develop an attitude of kindness, an attitude of compassion, one that allows beings to just be according to their karma. We don't need to judge anyone. We can just allow beings to go according to their karma. And we focus on our own intentions. We focus on our own heart. We make our own heart good. And we start by doing that through this means to allowing ourselves to be at peace in the present moment, letting go of the past, letting go of the future, which is of course easier said than done. But by beginning to appreciate the present moment, by really tuning in to what it means to be here, now, really appreciating this opportunity, having come to meet the Dhamma, being together with friends in the Dhamma, we can be safe, we can be at ease, we can be at peace. And so we take this present moment and make it the most important moment in our lives. And then the past and the future are no longer such strong pulls on the mind. And we watch each breath as it goes in by itself, as it goes out by itself. We're neither pushing nor pulling. We're not trying to manipulate the breath, but we are trying to watch an old friend, and we're just allowing this old friend, our breath, to be exactly as it is. And we just watch from a position of knowing. Breathing in, we know, now I am breathing in. Breathing out, we know, now I am breathing in. The breath breathes, the mind knows, and that's all. So the suggestion for tonight that I was given, I was quite surprised because it sounds like a fairly deep topic. But why not? Sometimes we need to talk about the deeper stuff. Hopefully that can inspire us to aspire to these realizations. So the topic that was suggested, and this is my disclaimer, I didn't choose it, is free will and the illusion of self. So, what are we going to say about that? First of all, a question. How many of you think you have free will? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the rest are just abstaining, or do you all believe you do not have free will? Okay, you're assuming you don't have free will. Okay, that's interesting. If we did not have free will, then how could we make a choice to uphold, say, the 5 precepts, as we have just done? We make a choice before a wholesome mind state to abstain from killing, stealing, adultery, lying, taking intoxicants, and that's a choice. So is that choice an expression of free will? Yes and no, and yes and no. Free will, well, free will means that you have a choice, that you choose to say yes or no, that you choose to do good or evil, that you choose to whatever, do anything really. Say, there are 2 extremes. Actually, well, let's see, maybe I'll come up with more than 2. But the first one is everything is determined. Everything is written in the book already. We have absolutely no choice. It's completely predetermined. Life happens according to whatever, God's will. That's one extreme. The other extreme would be to say that nothing really matters. Whatever we do doesn't have any consequences. So we can do whatever we want. No result of good and bad action. And I hope at least most of you will know that that's a pretty strong wrong view. But there's also the idea that everything is arbitrary. Everything happens according to chance. So it's either preordained or everything happens according to chance. Is there another option? Can't think of one right now. But free will would be neither, would it? It means that there is a choice. Things are not preordained. Things are not predetermined. And they're certainly also not happening according to chance, just arbitrarily. Now, most of you think that we don't have free will. So only a few said we have free will. And I would suggest that free will exists, but with a but. Anyone can think of what the but is? Free will exists, but what? Yeah, good on you, mate. 100 points or 500, whatever. You won the lottery. Free will is conditioned. Huh? So, I'm an alcoholic. Somebody puts a nice glass of 30-year-old whiskey in front of me. Good stuff. I have a choice. I can drink it, or I cannot drink it. But because I've been conditioned, because my conditioning is such that I have a strong craving for alcohol, it's more likely that I will drink that 30-year-old whiskey than to pass it up. It's a silly example, I know, but it makes the point. It makes the point because we know that part of us knows that we should keep the precepts. And that's what sila is, isn't it? Sila, virtue, is keeping precepts which pertain to our physical actions and our verbal actions. So before a wholesome mind state, we make that choice. We determine to keep these precepts. But because we are conditioned creatures, and certainly when we start keeping the 5 precepts, we will slip from time to time. And that's normal, because our conditioning, sometimes they make this distinction between the mind and the heart, or the mind and the flesh. And the mind is willing, but the flesh is weak, and all these kind of silly slogans you have. Yeah. So there is that aspect, that part in us, which is run by the defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion, which have been conditioned into our mind for countless lifetimes. And so when we become Buddhists, because some wisdom in us tells us that sounds pretty good, that sounds like a pretty good path. And so we get inspired and we start keeping the precepts. But from time to time we meet with conditions where, well, we break the precepts. And then we have to pick ourselves up again. And that's just life. That's just the way it goes. It's only someone who has really penetrated into the truth, into the Dhamma, into the heart of Buddhism, which is really cause and effect, isn't it? Taking responsibility for your own actions is something that you do once you realize that you basically have no choice. If you want to get out of here, you have to take responsibility for your own actions, because otherwise you'll just keep running on automatic. You're running on conditions. And that means you're running on borrowed time. So, yes, there is free will. There is the ability to make a choice with wisdom and mindfulness before a wholesome mind state. And then we can strive with energy and mindfulness and wisdom and all the right view that we can scrape together. We can try our very best to walk along that path that we've determined to walk on. And eventually things will become easier. With time, we find that keeping the precepts is actually very pleasant. Not only do you look after yourself by doing that, but you're also looking after other people. The Buddha always said, what is good for us and good for others and good for both. So doing things which are good for ourselves and not good for others, that's no good at all. Doing things which are good for others and no good for us, they're no good either. So we need to do what is good for us as well as both as good for others. And that's truly in keeping with what the Buddha meant by sila, a virtue. So that choice is there, but it's conditioned. And that was a very good answer. It is conditioned. But conditions, and that's why I really dislike this translation of sankhara. For those of you who know a little bit of Pali, been around long enough, the word sankhara is sometimes translated as conditioned phenomena, which, at least to my mind, implies that it is somewhat fixed. This is a conditioned phenomena, full stop. But sankhara are conditions or formations, or if you like Ajahn Thanissaro, fermentations. Doesn't really matter what you call them, so long as you know what it means. And the Buddha was once asked, he said, why are these sankharas called sankharas? Why are conditions called conditions? Because they condition the conditioned. And that's the point. So things that are already conditioned still have the capability of further conditioning. So it's both active and passive. What we are experiencing, all the five aggregates, body, feeling, perceptions, formations, they have it. Sankhara, consciousness, they're all formations, they're all sankhara. So they are both formed or conditioned, but they also condition in return. And that's what keeps samsara rolling. If you wanted to cut the dependent origination short, you could say avijja paccaya sankhara, full stop. That's it. That's all you need. That's paticca samuppada in short. From not knowing, from avijja, from ignorance, is always the opposite. Vijja means knowing. So from not knowing, with not knowing, there is formations. I actually prefer it even like that. But you can get your own head around it. Because usually you'd say from not knowing there are formations. But I like to say from not knowing there is formations. So not knowing what? Not knowing the Four Noble Truths, of course. Not knowing the Four Noble Truths, there is formations. And formations, what it really means is it implies that these things are for us, for me. They are me, they are mine, they are a self. That's what sankhara is, or what sankharas is, or sankharas are, if you like. So these formations, they form the formed, they condition the conditioned. And so if we want to change for the better, if we want to better ourselves, then we have to work with these formations. We have to see them for what they are. We have to understand them. And we understand them by actually seeing, beginning to know, beginning to understand how cause and effect work. That our experience arises because of causes. And it persists for a certain while. Experience lasts for a while, and then it ceases. It's not just arising and ceasing. In some traditions, they make this a very strong thing. Oh, when you see arising and ceasing, that's when you're really getting somewhere. But they're forgetting the fact that the Buddha actually also said that things persist. But the nature of sankhara, the Buddha said, is such that they have an arising, they have a persisting, but while they are persisting, they are also changing, and then they have a ceasing. So even though things persist, the nature of sankhara being that you watch carefully, you see that even while things persist, there is a change to be observed. And eventually, when the conditions cease, then the experience ceases. So everything arises because of conditions. And that's why free will is also conditioned. And if we understand that, then we know that we can recondition ourselves. And that's the whole point of the practice. If it wasn't like that, then we might as well stay in bed or go home or, I don't know. So the Buddha said there is a way out of this slavery to conditions. And that is by understanding conditions for what they are, understanding formations for what they are. And seeing them for what they are allows us, first of all, to not be so swept away by them. Whether it's emotions that we experience, whether it's feelings, whether it's thoughts, it doesn't matter. They're all formations. They have arisen because of causes. They last for a certain while, and then the respective contact ceases. And when the contact ceases, the feeling ceases, the emotions eventually cease. Have you ever tried to maintain a particular mind state for any length of time, even unwholesome ones? You have to really work for that. You have to really work hard to maintain one particular emotion, one particular train of thought, let alone feelings. I mean, they're so fleeting. Now we're happy, now we're sad, now it's pleasant, now it's unpleasant. So there is that change in conditions, there's a change in formations. But there's also that illusion of continuity. And that's where that illusion of self comes from. It's the illusion of continuity. It doesn't matter what we experience, whether it's sights or sounds, smells, tastes and touches, we experience thoughts. There's always this sense of, this is mine, this is me, this is I am experiencing this. Where does that illusion come from? It comes from some sense of continuity. And that is a blessing and a curse, in the sense that what makes for that continuity is the fact that the mind neither arises nor ceases. The knowing neither arises nor ceases. The objects of what we can know, they change all the time. But the quality of knowing is always the same. Whether I see something or hear something, I know what I see. I know what I hear. I know what I smell. At least I think I know. Yeah? So the smell ceases because the sound becomes more prominent. Then I know the sound. The sound ceases and I see something and I know what I see. Because the eyes don't really care what they see, do they? Have they ever complained to you? Can we look at something else, please? No, they don't. The eyes don't care. They don't care what they see. It's just their nature to see. That's what they're for. Therefore, the nose is just there to smell. But it doesn't care what it smells, whether it stinks or it's fragrant. The nose doesn't complain. I never heard my nose complain, ever. The tongue doesn't care what it tastes. And even the body doesn't care what it touches. It never complains. It's very patient like that. Yeah? And interestingly enough, the mind doesn't actually care what it knows either. That's a tricky one. Yeah? So, what the eye sees, the mind knows. What the ear hears, the mind knows. The nose smells, the mind knows. What the tongue tastes, the mind knows. The body feels, the mind knows. What the mind thinks, the mind knows. So that knowing, that continuity of knowing, that's where the illusion of self comes from. It's always my knowing. I am the one who knows. In Thai they have this word puru, the one who knows. So we have this illusion that we are the one who knows. We are the ones who experience all of this. It all happens to us. But where is that us? Where is that me? Where is that mine? And certainly not in the eyes or ears, nose, tongue, body, because they're just made up of the four elements, aren't they? Earth, air, water, fire, space. But the Buddha talks about 6 elements. Anybody know what the 6th element is? Huh? Huh? What's the 6th element? Consciousness, exactly. Mind is conscious. Consciousness is the 6th element. And that's the element of knowing, because consciousness is that which knows. So the Buddha uses these different words for that quality of knowing, depending on what he's pointing to. When he talks about chitta, the heart, it's usually a particular disposition or particular emotions. We say they are heartfelt qualities. I talked a little bit about loving kindness and compassion in the meditation. So those are the things we're supposed to feel in the heart. Or should I say that we know in the heart? Does the knowing have a place? Is the knowing in the heart? Or is the knowing in the brain? Where's that knowing? How do you know that you know? Or how do you know that you don't know? Where do you know? What knows? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Consciousness is knowing. The mind is knowing. The heart is knowing. The knowing is knowing. It's all a form of capability of receiving, knowing something. And that's always there. If we feel happy, well, I shouldn't bring the word feeling in it, because feeling is basically pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. There's no mixed feelings, at least not in Buddhism. Yeah. So when we are happy, we know that we're happy. When we are sad, we know that we are sad. But can we separate the knowing from the sadness? Can we separate the knowing from the happiness? Yes, we can. And that's, in short, the end of the line. That's, in short, the end of the problem. That's, in short, Nibbana. Luang Por Chah, he only spent a few days with Luang Pu Man. But that was enough, because he had enough wisdom. And the most important thing Luang Pu Man told him, he said, สังขารก็เป็นสังขารจิตก็เป็นจิตแยกกันก็หมดเรื่อง or something like that. Anyone speak Thai here? Nobody? The sankharas are sankharas. The heart is the heart, or the mind is the mind. If you can separate the two, then there's not much to do. Then you're on the way out. So for me, that always made a lot of sense right from the beginning, because the Thai teachers from the forest tradition would talk in similar terms. And it always really made sense to me, because I don't know, I'm not that experimental type. I'm more the kind of bash my head against the wall type, So it's like my practice is like I accumulated my skillful means, my ways of practice. A lot of it I just puzzled together from different teachers that I heard it from. And whatever made sense to me, I'd take it on board and I'll try it out. Then eventually, you kind of, or at least I got to the point where I felt, well, first of all, I got to stop. Stop the world. Stop the mind. I just got to bring it all to a halt, to a grinding halt. So all these things about investigating and contemplating, and yes, it was part of the practice, because if you're trying to stop and you realize, I can't, it just keeps going, then you have to use your wisdom. So you have to use your reflection, you have to use your investigation, you have to use your contemplation, you have to use wisdom to find out, well, why can't I stop this nonsense, right? So yes, you use wisdom, you use contemplation, but the aim, first of all, was, how do I stop this? How do I bring this mind to stop? How do I make this mind silent? How do I shut this stupid thinking mind up and be it only for 10 minutes? Any of you ever had the blissful experience of not thinking a single thought for, I don't know, even just a few minutes? Hopefully 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Yeah? It's beautiful. It's just absolutely delicious. Yeah? And then once you start appreciating that, and that's where we go back to this conditioning. Yeah? Because the mind craves happiness. Yeah? So when you notice that silence is actually happy, yeah? When you notice that peace is actually more sublime than activity, diversity, yeah? Then that conditions the mind into appreciating it more and more. And because the mind is a condition, at least on the level of conditions, that things then change. Priorities change, and the mind begins to incline in that direction. It inclines in the direction to where it perceives more happiness. So it's very important for us to really bring up those experiences of peace and remember them, but most importantly, remember how you got there. Yeah? If you can replicate the causes for peace, it's like, they have this thing when you want to help a poor person, you give him a loaf of bread. If you want to really help him, you teach him how to bake his own bread. It's the same with that. You need to find out where all this is coming from. Where is the noise coming from? Where are the feelings coming from? Where are the emotions coming from? Because they're not ordained. They're not from God. They're certainly not arbitrary either. We think certain thoughts because we've always thought them, because we've conditioned ourselves to think them. And sometimes there's a thought coming up in the mind, you ask yourself, where in the world does that come from? But the very fact that it is there means it already has its legitimacy. Because if it hadn't, it wouldn't be there. There's one monk in Thailand who got really sick, and he said to Luang Por Chah, it shouldn't be like that. And Ajahn Chah just said, what if it shouldn't be like that? It wouldn't be like that. Yeah? It's just, that's what nature means. Nature means there are certain causes that lead to certain results. And a lot of these things, you don't have a direct means to change because it's running on conditions. It's trying to stop a train that goes down the tracks with 300 kilometers an hour. You need a long way before that train can actually stop. And that's what conditions are. That's what formations are. These things, they run on fuel. They run on food. They run on what the Buddha called nutriment, ahara. So if we learn through careful observation where these things arise from, where they come from, how these conditions condition conditions, how these formations form formations, if we understand that, if we can actually see it happening in our own mind, then that's insight, that's wisdom. And then we actually find ways and means of reconditioning ourselves. It's with sila, we started off with taking the 5 precepts. In the beginning, it's difficult. People want you to have a drink. People want you to lie because it's more convenient. People want you to cheat because it's more convenient. People want you to screw other people over because it makes more money. That's the world. But to stand your ground, it's difficult. To stand your ground and actually live up to that enormously high standard of keeping the 5 precepts, and never ever underestimate keeping the 5 precepts. And that's like the cream of the crop of this universe. You are the cream of the crop when you keep the 5 precepts. You know how many people out there keep the 5 precepts in that world? You stick your nose out the window and look. How many people keep the 5 precepts? There's not many around. So realizing that even by doing that, yeah, you are reconditioning yourself in a way that is going to be bearing fruit sooner or later in an amazing way, because it's the groundwork, it's the foundation for peace, it's the foundation for wisdom. Without that kind of integrity and ability to take responsibility for your own actions, there will never be harmony. And without harmony, there's no basis for practice. There's no basis for spiritual progress. We need harmony. Wherever there is division in the world, wherever there is conflict, wherever there are factions developing that say we are right and everybody else is wrong, no, we are right and everybody else is wrong, that's the world where everything will be wrong, or is already wrong, because people don't realize that what they're actually running after are formations. They're running after conditions. They're running after nothing, basically. They're running after stuff that can never, ever be sustained. You can't sustain conditions. You can't sustain formations. It is impossible. The Buddha said once, he said, if there was a formation that was not impermanent, I wouldn't be saying that all formations are impermanent. I mean, that's like a lion's roar. What the Buddha says, you can actually trust for change. Can't trust many other things that other people say these days. Everything can be faked. All in the age of AI, the deep fake. Can't trust anything anymore. You can fake anything you want. I had this teacher in Thailand. They made a video of him, and he sampled his voice, his Thai voice. I turned it into English, and they lip synchronized his face. So it looks like he gives a talk in perfect English in his voice. Great, wonderful. But so what? People get fascinated by that. And they run after it, and they find, this is wonderful, this is amazing, what you can do, all the great things you can do with AI. And sooner or later, like in every B-class science fiction, AI is going to say, oh, these stupid humans, it's about time we get rid of them. So let's not run after sankharas. Let's not run after conditions. What we should be running after is the mind, the heart, the knowing, that which takes us to Nibbana, that which takes us out of samsara, that which takes us out of suffering. That's what we should be running after. That's what we should be training. Not this elusive self, which nobody can really find. It's like the Loch Ness Monster. Ajahn Brahm once said that. He said, just because you haven't found the Loch Ness Monster yet, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I like that. Just because you haven't found yourself yet, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's the assumption that everybody runs on. Okay, I haven't found myself yet, but I'm sure it's there somewhere. It's behind the door, maybe, somewhere. You can look until the cows come home. You won't find it because it's not there. But it doesn't mean that there is not an assumed self. It doesn't mean that there is not the perception of self. Because that's what we're running on. Somebody hits you on the thumb with a hammer, it's not somebody else who's going to hurt. You're going to hurt because it hurts. Someone hits you on the thumb with a hammer. Huh? But is that really you? Is that really yourself? Is it really your thumb? Is that really your feeling, your perception? Are these really your thoughts? If they were really mine, I could actually control them. I mean, that's what self is supposed to do. If I'm in control, and that's what the illusion of self does, it gives you the illusion that you're actually in control. What can you control? Have you ever asked yourself? Anything you've got really have control over? I've been looking for 35 years. I haven't found it. Got control over nothing. Can't control this body. I'm 60 this year, year of the snake. Old man, slowly, need a walking stick soon. Can't control my feelings, because feelings depend on contact. If there is a contact to be felt as pleasant, it's going to be pleasant. If there's a contact to be felt as unpleasant, it's going to be unpleasant. I can't control the weather. Otherwise, there'd be more people here. I'd make it sunny today. Can't. Can't control your emotions, can't control your tears, can't hold them back. When it's time to cry, you cry. That's conditions. But it's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. It's nature. But that's a tough one, isn't it? It's a tough one. That's why if we keep paying attention only to these formations, if we keep paying attention only to these conditions and keep running after them, trying to avoid pain, trying to find pleasure, trying to avoid suffering, trying to find happiness, that's life. That's what most people do. But as practitioners, hopefully, with faith in the Buddha, we can actually side with the mind. We side with the knowing. We develop that knowing by, first of all, and we've heard it a million times, just be mindful. Be mindful. It's so worn out that it hurts. But it's also so true. Because in German they have this word which I actually prefer when I give talks in Germany for sati, which is actually 𝐾𝐡𝐚𝐦𝐻, and it literally translates as presence of mind. So to me, that's always made the point a bit more clear. Mindfulness is just so wobbly. It's just is a mindfulness, and I never liked that word. I try to figure out what it is or what it's supposed to be, but it's only when in the meditation the quality of sati all of a sudden is elevated in samadhi, that you actually know what sati really is. And sati has many levels. Some people may think that there's either mindfulness or no mindfulness, but that's not true. Mindfulness has many, many, many layers, many levels. Any of you geeks know where the highest form of mindfulness is? Come on. You've been long enough with Ajahn Brahm, you should know. Fourth jhana, of course. Fourth jhana is the peak of mindfulness, the peak of sati. Because there's no more happiness there, there's no more pleasure, there's just equanimity, there's just purity of mind, knowing with equanimity. You're looking on without a vested interest in what you're seeing. There's no movement. You're just seeing, you're watching, you're knowing. A perfect equanimity means looking on. Pekati means to look, to see. So upeka means to really look, to look properly. And you can only look properly if the hindrances are gone. As long as there's still liking and disliking in the mind, you can't really look. You don't see what's actually there. You see what you want to see. So all that stuff, yeah, in the end, and I like that. It's because it's radical. I always liked radical things. All that stuff, you basically have to put into one big barrel and either burn it or chuck it overboard or get rid of it, basically. Because it's all the same. It's all the same. It's like Luang Por Tui once said very beautifully, if you really want something, because people always like new things, right? So we have this illusion that whatever people want to sell you, it's got to have at least somewhere the label new. So this is the new version, and this is the newest version. So people buy the stuff because it's supposed to be new. So we're looking for new things all the time, but in the end, it's the same chewed over garbage that we've been fed for countless lifetimes. Because there's only so much you can build out of earth, air, water, fire, and space. You only have these 5 building blocks. You can make a lot of stuff out of it and sell it as new, but in the end, it's all old. It's been there, done that. That's what déjà vu is. We've been there before. We've seen it before. We had it before. But if you really want something new, you got to stop the world. Stop the world where there's no more coming and going, where there's stillness, where there's silence, where there's peace, where there's true happiness, a happiness that is not dependent on conditions anymore, not dependent on causes. That's the only place there can be peace. If it's still dependent on conditions, if it's still dependent on formations, it'll change. It has to change because that's nature. It will change. Whether you like it or not doesn't matter. Whether you believe it or not doesn't matter either. It will still change. Bodies are born to get old. Bodies are healthy to get sick. Bodies are alive to die. That's just a fact of life. It's a sad fact, but it's only a sad fact because we identify with it. We take it to be me, to mine, myself, and that's why we suffer when these things change, isn't it? If it wasn't my body, I don't care. 60, 70, 80, sick, healthy, dead, alive, not my body. If I could do that, that'd be sweet. I'd be out of the game. But I'm not. I'm not, because there's still the illusion of self. There's still the illusion that, yeah, maybe next time if I do everything right. It's like my brother, he told me this once. I think he wouldn't mind if I tell the story. He had this girl he loved right from kindergarten. He was in love with her. And eventually they got together. And they had a beautiful couple of years, or I don't know how long. And eventually she kind of broke up with him. And he really, 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 really suffered over that. So then a few years went down. And then eventually, somehow, they got back together. Because they'd known each other for a long time, and there was a sense of comfort there and whatever. And so he had this illusion that now I've got the chance to do everything right. And if I do everything right, then it's going to last forever. Haha, good luck. Of course, it didn't last forever. A few months or a few years later, I can't remember, and broke up again, But it's like, it's this, I mean, I had this illusion when I was in Thailand. My teacher, we found this beautiful place at the edge of the Mekong, high up above the Mekong River, view, rising sun across to Laos, peaceful, quiet, uh, conducive for practice. And I saw myself getting old there, with my teacher getting old there, and me looking after my teacher until the end of days. That never happened. I became Australian. I got Australian passport. I got an Aussie passport and a German passport because I thought I'd be living with Ajahn Brahm in Perth forever. Well, that didn't happen, did it? And then it's just, we can't stake our hopes on conditions. We can't stake our hopes on formations. But we can stake our hope on the knowing. You cultivate that knowing. You sit there and you say, Buddho. And then you listen. And Buddho means knowing. The Buddha is the one who knows. So you say in your meditation, Buddho. And then you actually listen. What knows? What is this knowing? Where is this knowing? Who knows? What knows? And you investigate. You try to find this quality of knowing. And if you find it, even if you just first of all find it with mindfulness in the space between your thoughts, that sense of silence, that sense of emptiness, that sense of peace, and you expand that, and you work from that. And like I said a while back, make sure you appreciate that. Make sure you really appreciate peace. Make sure you really learn how to appreciate silence. Give yourself that contrast. It's Chinese New Year soon. There'll be hustle and bustle in the streets, and there'll be lots of noise and music and all those things that people love about Chinese New Year. Lots of cookies. So you enjoy that. And then you take to yourself to the cave in Bukit Timah, say, for instance, or East Coast Park Beach at 3 o'clock in the morning, where there's no one there, where there's absolute silence. And you compare. You get the contrast. And then you see, if you can't appreciate peace, you can't appreciate silence. Because that's how we recondition ourselves. We recondition ourselves, one, by looking at the negative things of what we want to abandon. And on the other side, we look at the positive things that we want to achieve, that we want to attain, that we are aspiring to. So you have these two things. They always have to go together. Where's suffering? That's where I want to get away from. Where's happiness? That's where I want to go. But the level of happiness changes. The degree of happiness changes. The kind of happiness changes. Until you reach true happiness, which is the happiness of freedom, the happiness of freedom from formations, freedom from conditions. The Buddha said in Nibbana there is no sun, no moon, no stars, there's no coming, no going, no arising, no passing away, no persisting. I can't remember what else he said in that sutta, but there's none of that. And he said, still, that place is not a place of darkness. He said, but this is the end of suffering. So if you have faith in the Buddha, you trust in that, you trust in the knowing, you trust in your heart, you trust in your mind, but not the conditioned mind, not the conditioning mind, not the formed mind, not the forming mind, not the different kinds of consciousness, side consciousness, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness, always changing, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. But pure consciousness. I'm not afraid of saying that anymore. I'm sure in some Buddhist circles it's politically incorrect because some sutta geek will come and say, well, but the Buddha said consciousness is impermanent, it's suffering, it's not self. Yeah, it's suffering, it's not self because it's affected by delusion, it's affected by greed and hatred, it's conditioned. But when you take all the formations away, you take all the conditions away, you take all the defilements away, there's got to be something in here which is worth purifying, isn't it? Isn't that path about purification? What's the Visuddhimagga mean? It means a path of purification. What are we purifying? Are we purifying the body? No. Are we purifying feeling? No. Are we purifying perception? No. Are we purifying formations? No. Are we purifying consciousness? Maybe. Certainly we're purifying the heart, we're purifying the mind, because that's what it says in the suttas. It's the liberation of the heart. We called our monastery in Germany Muttodaya, which means liberated heart. So to me anyway, it was always more inspiring, this idea that in this experience of ours, which is sometimes happy, sometimes not, but in that experience, there's something in there which is worth purifying, which is worth liberating. And that's what I've been looking for. And I think that I'm on the right path there. Because that quality of knowing, it becomes more and more prominent. It becomes more and more something that stands out. It's like we're all meditators, or at least I hope most of us anyway. Yeah? So when you meditate on your breath, eventually, hopefully, you should get to that point where there's just two things. There's the mind, knowing, and there's the breath, breathing. Everything else is gone. Literally gone from your awareness. There's just breath, breathing, because that's what breath does. It breathes in and it breathes out until it doesn't, and then you're dead. So, but until you're dead, you're breathing in and you're breathing out. Whether you're watching your breath or not, doesn't matter. You're still breathing. So leave the breath alone, but watch it. So the mind watches the breath. The mind knows the breath. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Now you do that for long enough. That breath, because it's a condition, because it's a formation, it's the kaya sankhara, it's the bodily formation. Yes, three kinds of formation, if you remember: bodily formations, verbal formations, and mental formations. So the bodily formations is in and out breathing, the verbal formations is vitaka vichara, thinking and pondering, and the mental formations, that which conditions our mind, which makes up the state of our mind, the quality of our mind, is perception and feeling. So, now when you watch your breath, and that's all there is left, it's just the breath breathing, you're not controlling it, you're not manipulating it, you're just watching it the way it is, becomes more and more and more peaceful. Yeah? But the knowing becomes more and more stable, more and more clear, more and more sharp. Yeah? Then you got a chance to understand what the knowing is. Because there's not that many things that you need to know and pay attention to. There's just breathing. but you know that you're breathing in, you know that you're breathing out, but you still don't know the knowing. Yeah? So eventually, that knowing, I like to say it like that. Many people can't figure it out or find it not very particularly useful, but for me, the idea that the mind, as it were, turns around 180 degrees and looks at itself. It's like the knowing turns around on itself and it knows itself. So the knowing starts to know the knowing. So then you actually start knowing the mind. The mind knowing the mind is the path. That's one of the most famous sayings of Luang Pu Dun, one of the great Zen-like teachers in the forest tradition. The mind, knowing the mind, is the path. So that's what jhanas are. The jhanas are the states where the mind knows the mind. So, like I said in the beginning, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a curse in the sense that this knowing gives us the illusion of self. But if we know that it gives us the illusion of self, we already have one up on it. We already have the advantage of knowing that. And then we can pay attention to that. And we can pay attention to how we create the sense of self through that knowing. And we can also pay attention on how to decrease the sense of self through that knowing. Because in the end, the knowing is just the knowing. The knowing is neither me nor mine nor myself either. But that's anagami level. And the anagami, that's his job before you become an arahat, to let go of the one who knows. Until then, stick with the one who knows. Believe it's yours if you like, it's okay. But eventually, the one who knows needs to die. They have this saying, when you meet the Buddha in the street, kill him. You ever heard that? It's a Zen saying. You meet the Buddha in the street, kill him. So, it's the one who knows is the last illusion of self. But before that, we've got so many other things that we need to see for what they are, namely formations. And then we understand why we have a choice. And that choice lies in a very careful and very deliberate changing of conditions. And that's what training is, that's what bhavana is, that's what cultivation is, that's what development is. Chitta bhavana, the cultivation of the heart. That's what it is. It's first of all giving up evil and developing good. And only then can we start to purify the mind. Remember, it's a saying, it says in Nolamara on the Buddha statue outside in front of the Dhamma hall. It's from the Ovada Patimokkha teaching the Buddha gave in the bamboo grove in Rajgir. Giving up evil, developing good, and purifying the mind, purifying the knowing. So it's the best I can do for your the idea of free will and the illusion of self tonight. So if you give me a couple of minutes to go to the toilet, it's what happens when you get 60 years old. Your prostrate is packing up already. And then we can have some more Q&A if you like. So. Excuse me.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. First question from anyone?
Okay, so anybody know wants to some questions? Right? Yes.
Hello, Ajahn. Thank you for the Dhamma talk. Still trying to digest it. I have a question about the self. I think certain aggregates are easier to see that it's not self than others. There's one aspect that I find particularly more difficult to see that it's not self, that is intention. Sometimes I still feel I still feel a sense of self because I feel that there's a control what I can intend to do. I can intend to make a certain decision. I can intend to go somewhere, do something, think of something. How can I break this illusion of like eye making when it comes to being able to intend? Yeah, thank you.
To quote one of my teachers who was once asked, he visited us in Perth, and somebody asked about non-self. So I translated the question, and he said, "Huh?" Because I pronounced anatta slightly the way that we would pronounce it in the Pali, but in the Thai they pronounce it anatta, they pronounce it slightly different. So he didn't hear what I was saying. So I said, "Huh?" So I said, "Anatta." Ah. He said, trying to explain anatta to that person, non-self, is like trying to squeeze lemon juice out of a freshly planted lemon tree. So bear with me, that's not the whole answer, but you get my point. Yeah. So don't kid yourself into thinking that some parts are easy to understand, some are more difficult, which there's some truth to it, of course, but it's like the seeing into any aspect of the Dhamma. It's like, do you know what a hologram is? Yeah. If you have a hologram, the nature of a hologram is you take one part out, you got the whole again. Yeah? So the hologram is just the nature of it. You take one part out, then that part bears all the parts and becomes the whole again. Yeah? So the Dhamma is like that. You take any part of the Dhamma out, yeah, you find the whole Dhamma in that. You find the Four Noble Truths in every aspect of the Buddha's teaching over 45 years. You find certain the core of the Dhamma, yeah, is in every aspect, and every aspect bears the whole, and that's the nature of the Dhamma. In other words, true seeing into the truth, yeah, it gives you, by seeing into one thing, you see into the whole. Say, if you really see impermanence, it doesn't matter where. If you take one of your hair, contemplate it, and see it for what it is. You see it in terms of the four elements. Yeah? You see it in terms of not particularly beautiful. Yeah? You wouldn't want it in your soup. Yeah? You see it as impermanent. You see it as suffering because maybe it's one of the gray hairs, maybe not yet, but in a few years. Yeah? You see one hair, you see them all. You don't have to go around everybody in this room and pluck their hairs out and contemplate them. No. You've seen one, you've seen them all. Yeah? So anatta is the same. It's like whatever skillful means you develop, or whatever attracts your attention, or whatever holds your fascination, where you find it easy to make a connection. That's where you should practice. That's where you should focus on. So don't focus on the difficult parts that you don't understand yet, but take those parts where you find, oh, here I have a chance. Because once you actually penetrate into the nature of non-self in that part, you also see it in the other parts. So cetana, intention, it's very elusive. It lies on a level that oftentimes most people don't have even access to it. We're aware of our desires quite often, yeah, but where they come from, yeah, we don't know. Yeah? So cetana is a very subtle. It's a very subtle. This impulse of intention. It works on a very subtle level. Some intentions obviously are coarser and grosser and more easy to see. But that's part of what also, it's also part of the delusion. Yeah? The avijja, the not knowing, is because it's almost like the job of avijja is to make you unaware of your intentions. It's like avijja will sell you bad stuff and make it look like the most precious stuff in the world. Yeah? And then when you fall for it and buy it, it's the same avijja that comes around and gives you the guilt trip and tells you, ah, you're stupid, you bought that, or you're a bad person, you did this. Yeah? It's the same old avijja, it's the same old delusion, yeah, that makes us follow our defilements and then gives us a guilt trip afterwards. Yeah? So guilt is an unwholesome mind state. Yeah? So some people feel they have to feel guilty when they do something wrong. Yeah? They should feel a sense of shame and fear of the consequences of their actions before they do something wrong. That's a wholesome mind state, a hiri and ottappa. But the guilt afterwards is actually an unwholesome mind state. It just makes us crazy. Yeah? But then again, how do you differentiate between, say, guilt and remorse? Because remorse is obviously something we feel. Yeah? And one of the benefits, the Buddha said, of keeping sila is a lack of remorse. It's like being a virtuous person, you have nothing to feel remorse about. So, and that lack of remorse, that's what gives you that sense of ease, that sense of peace, that sense of contentment, that sense of self-worth. Yeah? And that self-worth is actually a good thing to develop. Don't be afraid of praising yourself for the good stuff that you have in you. Yeah? Yes, you can bear at the back burner, you can remind yourself, it's all not self. But it's like the other day, I can't remember where, somebody was talking about contemplating the suffering in happiness. What was it? Contemplating the impermanence in piti. Was it? Were you there? Yeah. And I said to the person, if you contemplate the impermanence of joy, that joy will disappear. It will manifest its impermanence. Yeah? But in the beginning, we need to hold on to that because that's our food for the journey. Yeah? So if it's happiness and joy that comes from wholesome qualities, then it's not something we need to be afraid of. Yeah? We can develop it, we can cultivate it. Yeah? And it's only much later on that when you get into deeper states, like strong equanimity, where that rapturous, that kind of bubbly happiness is sort of calmed, that you get something better, but then that joy disappears by itself. Yeah, and then it deepens into equanimity. You know yourself that this is more sublime, this is more peaceful, and you can stay with that. So, but with regard to trying to get your head around this cetana, this intention, it's quite good. The Buddha, when he gave advice to his son Rahula, he said you should always, before committing an action, while you're committing an action, and after you committed an action, check your mind. Yeah? So if you check up on yourself before you do something, why do I want to do it? What am I aiming for? Where am I coming from? What's my true intention there? Yeah? And then don't feel guilty when you notice that intention is not so pure, not as pure as you maybe like it to be. Yeah? Don't give yourself a hard time, but know that as a formation, know that as a condition, know that as something that has arisen because of causes that you are now buying into, but don't have to. And that, I guarantee, you reflect like that, that disappears straight away. That's how you make progress. Not by killing it, by whipping yourself over the back for being a bad person, having bad intentions, but look at intention straight in the eye and say, I know you, Mara. Like the Buddha. I say, I know you, Mara. I know you. You're not going to fool me again. That's how you make progress, not by feeling guilty or not by giving yourself a hard time. Because these things, once they arise, like I keep saying, they already have their legitimacy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. If it shouldn't be like that, it wouldn't be like that. It's conditioned, but it's not yours. You can just allow it to be, and if you don't give it the attention that it demands, it disappears. See what I mean? Okay, let's digest that then. Okay, any other ideas, questions? How long do you usually go? 10 o'clock or 9:30, or what's your?
9:30.
9:30. Okay, so we got at least time for one more question.
Yeah. Thank you, Ajahn. Yeah. So you look into the intention, it will go away, and very soon you'll come back, and you have to look at. So you need a lot of stamina to keep doing that, right?
Not sure that I quite followed your line of thought there.
As in, I know what Ajahn is talking about. As in, you have this intention, you know it's unwholesome, and then you not going to buy in, so you go away. But in a while, you will come back again, and you have to keep doing that. So
Yes.
it takes a lot of determination. And
yes, a lot of the, I mean, in a sense, the whole of the path is repetition. I mean, the practice is a lot of the practice is repetition. We can't expect that having these conditions, that been conditioning the conditions for countless lifetimes, that by experiencing an insight once, or seeing something once, or contemplating something once, that somehow it disappears. So we need to repeat it. It's very, very true, and that's part of practice.
Okay.
And that's why practice is also so difficult, because we're basically by nature lazy. Yeah. So we think that once we've contemplated something once, I've done some body contemplation today, and now I can take it easy. Yeah. But you have to repeat it, because for the mind to be reconditioned, it takes time. It takes time.
Thank you.
Last
Okay,
question.
the quick one more.
Last question, anyone?
Hi, Ajahn. Just wanted to ask, is it just past conditions which influence our present actions and decisions?
No. I mean, they're a large part of it, but that's what this whole talk was in a sense about. It's like the fact that we have a choice, the fact that we have free will, but that free will is conditioned. So you have a mixture of the past, but you also have a means to act on that accumulated stuff from the past. So it's like you're working with that. So what you're experiencing, a lot of it is, like you say, is conditioned, is formed in the past. Yeah. But then what you make of it is much more determined by your attitude towards it right now. Just like I said to her now, it's like you can either buy into that guilt trip, and feel guilty and feel bad about yourself, or you can now, you see that conditioned intention as something unskillful, but you now have the opportunity to try and see it for what it is, which is a formation, a condition. It's not something that you are compelled to react on. So you're not compelled to react in the way that you've always reacted. You can change. You can make it, but that takes effort. And the stronger the conditioning from the past is, the more effort it takes to go against the grain. So going against the grain, is a lot of our practice. Is because that's where friction arises. You go against the grain, friction arises, but that friction is actually good, in the sense that it makes you aware of how much you are a victim of conditioning, and then it brings up the aspiration to get free from that. You don't want to be a victim of conditions forever, but you got to start by making your stand and saying no to certain conditions, no to certain things that you know have caused you suffering in the past. You can reflect on that. Sometimes I do that when I have desires for certain things, which as a monk are pretty pointless. I have sexual desire. Say, for instance, if I start fantasizing about sexuality, I'm just torturing myself, or I might as well disrobe, get married. You see what I mean? But it's like, it doesn't mean that it doesn't arise. But if I'm aware of it, if I see it for what it is, then I don't necessarily have to play into it, to buy into it, to feed it. But sometimes it just overwhelms you, and that's okay, and that's when you duck. And it's like Ajahn Chah used to say, it's like a soldier who is in the trenches. If you stay in the trenches, it's unlikely that they shoot you, because you keep your head below the level of the ground. But you're not going to win the war like that. So there's got to be the time when you get out of the trenches and you start running towards your enemy. And that's, of course, when you can get shot. So it's like waiting for the right time to fight those habits and unwholesome, unskillful conditions, and knowing the right time when to just duck and say, okay, right now I don't have much of a choice. Yeah? Sometimes with thoughts is very clear. Sometimes you have a train of thought and you're obsessing over that train of thought and it goes on for hours. Yeah? And you basically know that you got pretty little chance to stop that train of thought. So you just sit back and say, okay, do your thing. Yeah? And you just watch it run itself out. Because eventually it runs out of steam. Yeah? But you just have to sit it out. Yeah? So to fight that, it costs a lot of energy. But maybe you've done it before and you know you can't win. So you might as well write it out. Yeah? So it's just that's what wisdom is knowing when to fight, knowing when to duck. Knowing when you can do something, some conditions you can do something about, some they're just too strong at the moment, you know. But at least you don't react on the ones that are really bad, and that's what sila is, that's what virtue is, that's what morality is. You make a determination before a wholesome mind state and say, okay, those things, at least those things, I'm not going to do them anymore. And you take it from there. Okay, so we
The three
do the
practice, and then
dedication
we do,
of merits.
yeah.
Yeah. So if you all want to join in dedication of merits. Etavata chahamhe sampatang punya sampadang sape deva anumodantu sapa sampatisitiya etavata chahamhe sampadang punya sampadang Sape Buddha Anumodantu Sapa Sampatisitiya Etavata Cha Amhe Hisampada Punya Sampada Sape Buddha Anumodantu Sapa Sampatisitiya Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, pay respects to Buddha Dhamma Sangha.
Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavanta Abhivademi. Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Let us pay respect to Ajahn.